Okay, are we good to get started? Alrighty, well, it's obvious that we underestimated the popularity of the nerd sessions. And we're going to have to fix that for next year. We want to thank you all for coming. Brief item of business, we had an iPod last. Oh, we found it? Never mind. Hey, so welcome to the Canvas Roadmap for Nerds session. I am Mitch Macfarlane. I'm the VP of... It's 11 o'clock. I am the VP of Client Services and Product for Instructure. I've been with the company for about 2 years. Prior to Instructure, I have a couple of degrees at BYU. I worked at GE and I worked at Mosey. I'm a firm believer. Speak up. Okay. I'm a firm believer that milkshakes must be drinkable. I don't know if there are any of you out here that feel the same way. Otherwise, it's just ice cream. And if this Nigerian prince thing comes through for me, I'm going to laugh at all of you who didn't give him money, right?
So I'm Zach Wily. Whoa. This is my new son. So, thank you. So I'm VP of Engineering and Operations. I've been at Instructure for about 3.5 years. I also studied computer science at BYU and most recently came from Mosey before Instructure. I'm the resident Panda aficionado, and I recently launched my acting career. You all saw my first role, so I'm really excited to see how this turns out. All right, so most of us should remember this guy, right? Sexy sax man. Yeah, so he's not here with us this year. It's too bad. But in the spirit of sexy sax man, we're going to be running this session like a mullet. Business in the front, party in the back. So Mitch is going to be discussing the business parts of the roadmap, what we're doing, and why we're doing it. And then I'll be throwing in the party or the tech stuff. So let's get started.
Seriously, Zach, why do I always have to get the business end of things?
Remind me, what were your degrees from BYU, Mitch?
Okay, I have an MBA. I guess that makes it all right. This document represents the roadmap for the second half of this year. These are the things that we're going to be doing. Study it because you'll never get another copy. Just kidding. We'd be happy to send you an electronic copy of this. Reach out to your account relationship manager. My email address is at the beginning of the presentation. Feel free to send me an email if you want a copy. People often ask when we show off a roadmap, hey, how do you guys decide what you're going to work on? And we've got a nice tight-knit group here. I feel like I can trust all of you. So I'm going to share a really big secret. It's never been done before in the LMS market, but we talk to the people who use the software. Seriously, don't tell. If the other guys find out, we might be in trouble. So we're super excited about this roadmap, and we'll go from there.
So before we jump into the roadmap items, I want to talk a little bit about API. And we talk a lot about openness, about platform, interoperability, and if you don't feel like you've been beat over the head at this conference with those concepts, then you haven't been paying attention, and you should probably go see your school nurse. An open API is at the heart of what we do, and when we write or rewrite features, we start with the API, and then we build the feature on top of that. For example, our mobile apps are 100% built on the open APIs that are available to everybody. And our long-term goal is for you to be able to do everything possible in Canvas via APIs. So this ridiculously cute panda is this is Xiao Li Wu at the San Diego Zoo. He was born last year, I think, and he's being very protective of this ball. So sometimes online services are like this, right? They don't want to give up their data. You give it to them, and then they hang on to it really tightly. And sometimes Canvas can be like this. Eventually, Xiao Li Wu is going to grow up, and he's going to learn to share his toys. And so let's look at how Canvas has grown up in the past couple of years. So 2 years ago at InstructureCon, I presented that, hey, we just started our API, and we had 5 API components available. And we were pretty proud of ourselves, just with this really small amount of things you could do via the API. Last year, a year ago, I did another slide showing the difference, and these are all of the API components that we had added. And in the last year, we've added 23 more, so we're up to a total of 45 API components, which I think is pretty good progress. And you can see this is too much stuff to read, but a lot of this is driven by development of the mobile apps and other features that we've built in Canvas, because we build the API first now. So we've certainly grown up and learned to share our toys. So just because we have a lot of APIs doesn't mean they're perfect. In fact, yesterday, 4 completely unrelated people came up to me and said, hey, Zach, you're the VP of engineering. Why the heck can I not filter by courses or filter the courses API by enrollment terms? And I'm sorry, it's an oversight. Sometimes we make mistakes. Last night at Hack Night, one of our engineers implemented it. It was like 5 lines of code, and it'll be out in one of the next releases. So that's a lot of applause for 5 lines of code, but keep the feedback coming. So there have been several talks at the conference about APIs. If you only catch one, I encourage you to go to Zach Pendleton's talk. It's got this really long title, You Can't Spell Love Without API. I don't know if that's true, but anyway. So attend that. It's later on this afternoon, and maybe you'll find out what that means.
All right. So it's business time. So let's get back to the roadmap here. The first item that I wanted to talk about is improving student and instructor communication. How many of you have used the inbox in Canvas? Any inbox users? How many of you believe that some changes are probably necessary? Yeah, I think that was the same number, right? So we're going to make sweeping changes in the Canvas inbox in the next 6 months. Things like adding subject lines, course filtering, automatic archival of messages for concluded courses, and significant UI improvements. So we're really, really excited about this. And thank you. When we look at things, changes to the system, we take very seriously the user experience changes, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about our UX process. Earlier I mentioned that when we make the roadmap, we do that by talking to our users. And that may have been a slight oversimplification. There's some competitive analysis and market analysis and business strategy that goes into all of that. But when it comes to the UX process, it is 100% true. We talk to our users. We put prototypes in front of them and make sure that we're satisfying their needs. And we discover new needs in that process. And then we rinse and repeat a lot to make sure that we come up with designs that really work for all of the use cases out there. So we're super excited about this process. We're getting better all the time. Every once in a while we make a mistake, and Rob Ditto points it out for us. But we're making great improvements here. So that brings us to the next roadmap item, which is making Canvas easier to use. So we are consistently rated the #1 easiest to use LMS out in the market. Over and over. We run studies, we get feedback from people who are piloting Canvas, and always #1 in terms of ease of use. So why is it still on our roadmap? Well, that's how important it is to us. It is critical that the system be very easy to use and that the technology get out of the way. And so this second half of the year, we're making improvements to the groups, the inbox, like I said. SpeedGrader. SpeedGrader is going to get a full UX overhaul. Modules, and we're improving the overall navigation experience in Canvas.
So speaking of user experience, Canvas is a pretty big application, and over the years, big web applications tend to accumulate some cruft, some different styles. Here I went into these are pulled from the actual Canvas repository, a bunch of icons that have been used in Canvas. and a lot of them at the same time. And it's pretty. There's 6 different types of check boxes or check marks. The progress indicators are ridiculous. I mean, that's crazy. So this builds up over time because if you don't have a consistent guide to follow to make sure you use the same things everywhere. So what we did was we started building a style guide. And a style guide is part of Canvas. Anybody can go look at it. You can go to your Canvas URL/style guide. And the style guide provides guidelines for engineers who are building new UI components into Canvas. And it has guidelines on how to use different things so that they're consistent across the app. So in this part of the style guide, you can see a consistent set of icons that were developed for Canvas. And what's interesting about these icons is that they're actually a font. So usually when you see icons in an application, each of one of them is a little image, and if it needs to be changed, then you give it to your designer, and he tweaks it in Photoshop, and he gives it back to you, and you put it back in the application. But with your icons in a font, you can actually style them with CSS. So changing the size, changing the color, adding drop shadows, you can all do it really easily with CSS, which is pretty cool. And nearly all of the icons in Canvas have been replaced now with this icon set. So hopefully that's helped sort of improve the consistency across Canvas. Another style guide example. So there are several places in Canvas where we display a list of content, like a list of assignments, the quizzes list, the modules list, and they're all displayed in different ways. I don't know if you've noticed. So we built the concept of an item group, and here in the style guide there's HTML that the engineers are supposed to use to follow whenever they're going to be doing a list of items like this. And then below the HTML there's an example of how that HTML will be rendered. So you'll start seeing over the coming months as we redo things like modules to include new features, like Mitch has talked about, you'll see these new styles showing up, driven by the style guide. Another thing we did a few months ago was incorporate Twitter Bootstrap for providing a more consistent form styling across Canvas. Sorry. Thank you. So you may have noticed in one of the releases, I think it was in February or March, all of a sudden all of the forms started looking a little bit nicer in Canvas. They got these pleasant blue backgrounds. But they should look more consistent across browsers now.
Okay. The next item on the roadmap that we want to talk about is more course management options. Any frustration with the course conclude process out there? This is another one. Yeah, big tall hand back there. This is another one that we've had some struggles with. People don't know what to expect when they conclude a course or when a course auto-concludes due to term dates or whatnot. And so we're going to clean this up. We're going to make sure that you know exactly what's going to happen when a course concludes and that you have controls over specific items of that course conclude process. So you can control visibility of materials or submissions or whatever it might be. So big enhancement coming. The other one that I want to talk about is something that we call draft state. The most popular feature request out on our feature discussion forums is something that was called hide rather than hide modules, right? And so got to figure out what that means, but what it really is the ability for an instructor to have a sandbox of sorts within Canvas where they can work on content without having prying eyes, students, looking at that content and monitoring every change. So we're adding a draft state that will allow you to control module visibility at the module level or even at the individual item level. So if you want to keep a quiz in a draft state so nobody knows that it's coming, that will be available to you.
Can you talk about timeline on these, please?
Okay, so timeline, we are intentionally keeping some things a little loose, right? We have a 6-month window. But the timeline for this draft state, we are hoping early August for the release on this. So we're trying to hit before your fall semester starts. No pressure. Woo! Yeah. Sorry, Zach, you guys are going to be working long hours. We also want to make it easier to stay informed. And informed is a little different than communication. What we're talking about here is data. We want to provide instructors, administrators, counselors, everyone who needs the data, we want to make it available to you. Canvas stores a lot of data. Every time someone looks at a page, we log that. We know how long they spent on the page, time on task. And so we want to surface this data and then also give you tools that you can do meaningful things with the data. And we're calling that predictive alerts. So as an instructor, you have the ability to say, okay, if Johnny or anyone in the course has 3 late assignments, I want to be alerted. And that way you can take sort of a proactive approach to helping that student out before it's too late. So really looking forward to that one.
So speaking of all this activity data, so Canvas Cloud, we've now started bumping up against 1 billion page views a month, which is a lot. And at one point, page views made up more than 50% of all of the data that we stored in Canvas, and we were storing it in the relational databases. Page views, they're constantly being generated, but they're rarely ever read from, and it's just it didn't really make a lot of sense to store that alongside the other transactional data in the Canvas database. So enter Cassandra. Cassandra is a large-scale database perfect for storing large and growing data sets. And last year, we began migrating all of the page views out of the Canvas databases into Cassandra. And so far, all but a couple institutions now have finished that migration. So almost everybody in here, your institution's page views are going into this new Cassandra cluster. The cluster is 24 nodes. It spans our Virginia and Oregon data centers. It has 30 terabytes of storage and plenty of room to grow. So we're excited. We're really excited about having this large data store for storing this sort of activity data. We're not alone in using Cassandra. This is a few other big companies that are using Cassandra. Netflix especially is using it in a big way.
Really?
Did you take care of that, Mitch?
Really? That's what you did to me?
All right. I'm guessing that's a no?
That's a no.
Okay, we'll just move on then.
All righty. The next roadmap item is deepening the integration of outcomes. Outcomes is a hot topic right now, and in fact, a lot of federal funding depends on your ability to report on how students are doing against outcomes and their mastery of those. And so we want to get more granular with how we look at outcomes. So not just outcomes on the course level, but we're talking about individual content level. So content pieces, quiz questions with an outcome associated, discussions, maybe a chat session. Anywhere where you have an event or an activity that is related to an outcome, we want you to be able to attach it to that. And then we want to be able to report that data up for you. And I want to show you a little, this is just a mock-up. We have no idea if it's actually going to look like this. But this is a visualization of how we think it might work and showing the roll-up levels, right? So they're nested in the middle. You've got individual outcomes, but then they roll up into groups and groups within groups, right? And we want to be able to surface this data for you so that you can see how your students are doing within a class, maybe students across a subject area, and even students across the course or duration of their time at a university. So watching skills mastery and what impacts those over the course of 4 years. I guess this one's still mine. In fact, the next couple are. If you want more detail on that, Hillary Sharton in her higher ed and K-12 roadmap sessions talked about both of these, so watch for those recordings after the conference. Also want to talk about empowering integrated learning. So integrated learning, what does that mean? Well, it means that we want to have more than one activity represented in a page at a time. So if you've got some content, we want to be able to add quiz questions to it. Add a question at the start. What was their mastery of that content or that subject matter before they started? And then another one at the bottom so that you can see whether or not that content was actually effective in helping them master that outcome. Additionally, giving students the ability to engage more with each other. Having students know if other people in the course are on Canvas at that time or even on the same page. And so then they can reach out and ask a question. Or having discussions embedded in content about that specific content. And they can see a feed of the most recent posts or perhaps the most highly ranked posts in that discussion so that they can engage and have more meaningful experiences there.
So I want to talk a little bit about chat. Up until a few months ago, we had a third-party, Flash-based, free tool integrated with Canvas. It wasn't all that great, so we knew it wasn't going to be a long-term solution for us, so we started building our own chat. And that was released a few weeks ago. I think you need to talk to an account manager to get it enabled if you want to try it out. It's built in HTML5. It's got this clean, simple interface, and we added the most requested feature that we've gotten for chat, which is transcripts. So the architecture for chat is we built it as an LTI tool, and we think philosophically it's important for us to build as many big features into Canvas as we can as LTI tools. And a big reason for that is to dog food, to eat our own dog food and show that you can build these rich interactions in Canvas via LTI. At its core, the chat tool uses XMPP, and eJabberD is our current XMPP service that we're using. It's a clustered, highly available chat service. We built on XMPP, so we'd be building on a standard that other people would be able to leverage in the future. Yeah, browsers speak to eJabberD over a protocol called BOSH, which is basically XMPP over HTTP. And then in the background, transcripts are stored in Cassandra. So this is where having this Cassandra cluster is great for us. We expect that as we build these new chat features into Canvas, transcript data is going to become very large, and it's really a great use case for Cassandra. So this is a picture of Canvas right now. One of the things Mitch mentioned was in-page chat. So we don't have mock-ups for it yet. So this is the Facebook chat thing. That's kind of the direction we want to go. And the cool thing about this is it's probably going to take some additions to LTI to make this work, to have a tool embedded inside that's going to pop up over content and probably be able to interact with the page around it. And as far as we know, nobody's done that with LTI yet, so we're going to have to make some additions there.
Okay, it seems like mobile is everywhere, right? All students have mobile devices, and they want to do more with their mobile devices, and we want to be able to, we want to enable that. And so it means that they have to have a richer experience on their mobile device with Canvas. And so a lot of our focus for our mobile team in the second half of this year is enabling more of the core Canvas features on mobile. I believe that just now we're going to be releasing modules. This is a huge step forward. We're going to be giving instructors more grading capabilities on mobile devices, so phones and tablets. And having mobile polling is another thing that we've got. So students, all of them have these phones. Having them be able to interact with Canvas and give immediate feedback to their instructors through a mobile polling functionality, we think is a great step in the right direction. If you want to learn more about all of the mobile things that are coming out, look for the recording of Mark Suman's session. He did a couple of them, higher ed and K-12 both, so watch for those after the conference. And finally, I want to talk about our commitment to quality. We are very committed to continuing to improve the core features of Canvas. We dedicate time in every sprint. So sprint is a development cycle, and we dedicate time in every sprint to fixing issues. And in fact, we formalized a plan for gathering what are the most pressing issues from our clients, from all of you. And we call that the Customer Service Top 20 list. And so back in November, we sort of formalized this process, and we have client services bring us their top 20 issues, that if we solved these 20 issues, it would really make all of your lives a whole lot easier. Well, since November of 2012, we've closed 116 issues off of this top 20 list. We've got 10 more in progress right now, which means we've turned that list over 6 times, and we will continue to do that. So
another way we continue to improve Canvas is by upgrading the underlying technologies. Last year, I showed a slide that looked like this, saying that Canvas is built on Ruby Enterprise Edition 1.8.7 and Rails 2.3. And one of the common questions that we were getting all the time is, hey, when are you upgrading to Ruby 1.9? Well, and back then we were working on it, and now it's done. A few months ago, we upgraded all of the Canvas servers to use Ruby 1.9. Had some awesome performance and load benefits. And then the next question we always get is, well, what about Rails 3? Last year, we hadn't started working on it. We were planning on it. But now we are actively working on Rails 3. We don't have a timeline yet for when that'll be done. It's a pretty big job. But this is one of those things that like isn't ever going to show up on a public roadmap, but it's really important to keeping Canvas on modern technologies. Another thing that's not going to show up on a public roadmap but is critical to our success is scalability. So this graph shows how traffic has grown since the last InstructureCon. You can see back there in July 2012, we thought we were pretty hot stuff. I mean, yeah, things were going really well. And then the fall semester started, and that's like a 10x increase in traffic. And then this term started in January, and there was another at least 50% increase. And the things that we've done, we spent a ton of time expanding our infrastructure and removing bottlenecks and single points of failure, and it's really shown in our uptime stats for this year. And remember Josh's slide about how uptime is negatively correlated with the quality of M. Night Shyamalan movies? Well, actually, what it seems like happens is our uptime seems to get better as our traffic gets higher. So we're really proud of that, and we're going to continue working and keeping that true. Okay, so we've talked business, and we've talked party, and I hope it was informative, and now we will take some questions.
Yeah.
Have you or will you open source your chat tool?
Yes.
So the question for the recording,
sorry.
have we or will we open source the chat tool? Yes.
One of the things we're experiencing trouble with at SFU is the set criteria in WebCT. Before we left it, people said, oh, nobody uses that. And now that we are leaving it, we're discovering there are instructors who have been using it to sort of have a gradual release of content and sort of almost auto-run courses and all kinds of other things they used it for. Are you looking at any kind of programmatic or allowing these people and not those people to access things on a granular basis like that?
So we are. So the question was set criteria. We call it selective release or conditional release, adaptive learning. So will we release specific content to students based on some criteria? We are definitely looking at it, very excited about it. It is not in the next 6-month plan, but I would expect it to show up soon after that. Yes?
Will the mobile polling work for people that only have a basic phone?
So we're not sure what this is going to look like. For basic phone, need to repeat the question. Will mobile polling work for those who only have a basic phone? What we're looking at is probably those who have a data phone, a smartphone, the ability to render a quiz question and respond to it. We will look at things like enabling text responses to mobile polling, which a basic phone that would work on. It also alleviates some of the pressure on your university systems, university Wi-Fi, by using texting. And so we're going to look at that as well.
Zach, thanks for the courses. But are we going to have an accompanying terms API?
So the question is, thank you for the courses thing, and will we have an accompanying terms API? Yes, that was also started last night, so that'll be coming soon. So, yeah, it was a few more than 5 lines.
Will the courses work also at the account level? Account qual level courses and courses for the user. We want it at the account level.
Right. So I don't think that was changed, but we'll take that feedback.
Okay.
So the page view data, if on a page you are approaching, like, say, more than one objective, or if an activity or a quiz gets at an objective, are we able to track that data at the objective level, or is it just at the page view level?
So the question was, as we're looking at outcomes and adding outcomes to more activities, specifically pages in Canvas, can we track it at more than one level, beyond just the pages? Yes, you'd be able to track it at the student. So looking at students, looking at the objective level, looking at the page level, will give you a lot of different ways to slice and dice that data. Okay, I think there was one over here.
Do you plan to open source predictive alerts, attendance, and
Okay, another open source question for us. Open sourcing predictive alerts, attendance, and analytics. Great question. I can answer a couple of them.
Yeah, I think we're planning on open sourcing everything, except I don't think a decision has been made on analytics yet. Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, over here.
Yep. I'm curious what upgrades you have planned for the Wysiwyg editor and also for the navigation inserter on the right-hand side.
Okay, so question was Wysiwyg editor updates as well as the right-hand bar. So this is one that we get often. I personally am not a big fan of the right-hand bar because it cuts into your content area. And so we are working on getting rid of that right-hand space and finding ways of incorporating those actions into the main body of the content. As far as the Wysiwyg editor goes, no specific plans right now. We recently updated our, and now the name is MathJax, the ability to insert math equations in there. And so as things like that come up, we will add them. Looks like maybe we have time for one more question.
One of the big things in the e-learning authoring community, people who author with like Captivate and Storyline is the Tin Can API. And I'm curious if you have any plans to include that in your learning management system.
So the question is, are we going to include Tin Can API? The answer is we've talked about it a lot. No specific plans or timeline, but it's very interesting to us. Thank you all. We appreciate your time.